That wouldn't be good. We're not live, are we?
We are live. Hello. Welcome to this meeting of Oxford City Council Cabinet. This is an extra meeting for an extra piece of business. We are here today in the Town Hall on Wednesday, the 19th of March, 2025. So thank you everybody for joining us both in person and online. I think we do have some apologies for absence. So if you would. Yes, so we have apologies from Councillor Cho Monkonge, and I think Councillor Lubna Arshad may be late, and I believe the same is true of Councillor Ed Turner.
Councillor Louise Upton is also sending her apologies.
Ah, right, thank you. So Councillor Louise Upton was also sent apologies. Fantastic. Sorry, Anna, yes.
And I'll be leaving early.
And you'll be leaving early, yes. Thank you. Thanks very much. So we are now on to declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest they need to make? No? Okay. No? Okay. Addresses and questions by members of the public. We did have one notified, which is published with the agenda for the meeting. The person who notified us is unable to attend the meeting. But I have got a response to her address, which I'd like to read out. So I'm going to do that. So this is a response to Gina Camps-Walsh, who is the chair of the Parish Council in Beckley. So the response is, thank you for the letter you sent concerning local government reorganisation on behalf of several Oxfordshire parish councils and for your submission to this cabinet meeting. I note the letter was sent before any of its signatories would have seen any of the interim proposals for the creation of new unitary councils in Oxfordshire, including the 3 unitary proposal, as this was only published last Wednesday. In proposing the creation of a new unitary council that includes the City of Oxford and some of the surrounding area in central Oxfordshire, we recognise that this will require a reconsideration of how we understand our communities and our area. Oxford's boundaries have changed many times over the centuries to incorporate villages that still retain their own identity. Iffley Village became part of Oxford in 1928, Wolvercote in 1929, Blackbird Leys was built in the Greenbelt in the 1960s and incorporated in 1991 into the city, along with Old Marston, Risinghurst and Littlemore. The conurbation continues to expand and the city exerts a gravitational influence on surrounding areas, which make use of both the work and leisure facilities that we offer. Redefined boundaries will crystallise this into direct and mutual responsibility. We would not simply be asking communities to join the city, we ourselves will be joining well-established communities. We will need to draw on the wider identity that exists within areas beyond the city to help them become part of a cohesive whole. It is already accepted that Oxford cannot meet all of its own need for additional housing, which is why there are sites outside the city in South Oxfordshire, Vale of White Horse, Charwell and West Oxfordshire already allocated to provide additional housing to meet that need. A unitary authority based on the city with expanded boundaries can take charge of these sites, ensure that land is used efficiently, increasing density where appropriate to produce well-planned new communities. We would also release Greybelt land as the government has directed. We anticipate that city-adjacent sites will build to higher density, low-rise development, which would help reduce pressure on additional housing around existing villages. Although the White Paper made reference to a population of 500,000 for new unitary authorities, ministers have made clear that this might be considered a midpoint between some slightly larger authorities and ones of about 300,000. Ministers have also been very clear that proposals and decisions should be based on what makes sense economically and for local communities, as well as emphasising the importance of cities as places with clear identities and huge importance in terms of both local and national economies. Our proposal would create 3 viable unitaries, each with a sensible economic area, including one to our north and one that would combine much of South Oxfordshire and Vale of White Horse with West Berkshire, something the leaders of all 3 of those councils have commended. A central Oxfordshire council would be much closer to local residents and indeed to parish councils than one single council covering all of Oxfordshire, which if created would be the 3rd largest unitary authority in England. The Greater Oxford area would be supported by an expansion of this council's existing localities-based coordination of service integration and delivery, with dedicated officers covering groups of neighbourhoods. Our 3-unitary proposal also respects local identities. The experience of people within Oxford has a lot in common with those who are a short public transport ride into the city. There is much less obvious connection with those in places like Crockford. There is much less obvious connection with those in places like Crockford or Henley. And indeed, improving bus services into the city from neighbouring villages would be a priority for the new council. You have commented on our residents panel survey, which was asked a very straightforward set of open questions. The panel itself is made up of a representative sample of Oxford residents and is overseen by an independent polling company. The City Council's primary responsibility is to act in the interests of residents and businesses, and so it was entirely appropriate to seek some initial views. The questions asked whether people would favour a single county-wide unitary or a unitary based on the Greater Oxford area. We have also started the process of engaging more widely. We recently invited a representative of the Oxfordshire Association of Local Councils to attend our regular meeting with Oxford Parish Councils to seek views. In due course, as we develop our full proposal, we will clearly want to engage residents and businesses more widely, including those outside the city that would be being welcomed into a Greater Oxford Council area. We want to get everyone's views so we can shape a new council that best meets our residents' needs. However, it is important to recognise that in the end, it will be government that decides the final shape of new authorities in Oxfordshire. What is certain is that in future, none of our existing councils will exist in their current form. There won't be a South Oxfordshire District Council or a County Council or a City Council on its current boundaries and responsibilities. Rather, there will be new structures that bring together areas that had previously been separate. And thank you for bearing with me on that rather lengthy response, but it was quite a lengthy set of questions that were put to us, so I wanted to give them due consideration. Right, the next item on the agenda is councillor addresses on any item for decision on the Cabinet agenda. I don't believe we have any notified, or councillor addresses on neighbourhood issues, or items raised by Cabinet members, or scrutiny reports. So we are into our substantive business, which is the local government reorganisation interim response to government. Caroline, are you presenting this report?
Yes, I can do, and I will keep my comments relatively short. Just to outline the basis of the report for you tonight, as requested by government, requested a interim plan from local authorities to update on their preparation and planning for responding to the invitation from government to put forward proposals for local government reorganisation in 2-tier areas. In Oxfordshire, we have agreed to work together to produce a common interim plan, the idea being that we submitted to government in the name of all of the councils in Oxfordshire, but that interim plan contains 3 proposals which are being worked on for submission. Just to say, just to build a little more on your response to the question we've had this evening, we do believe it's important that in considering the future options for local government in Oxfordshire, that we properly take the time to consider what's best for residents across the county and in the different areas of the county in what will be the biggest reform in local government for 50 years. It can come across as a rather technocratic process, and there is quite a lot of technocratic work to be done in ensuring that the options we're considering are viable and feasible for the future. But I also think it's really important that we take this opportunity to carefully think about the role and purpose of local government structures in the places that we serve going forward. And we need to think about what potentially is the right structure for the next 50 years. There's an important considerations we know from government's perspective in that are about how the future structure and role of local government will support its growth agenda. But equally important, I think, is thinking about how these changes could actually support and lead to reform and better outcomes for our residents by reforming services and bringing them together in different configurations. I think the third element we need to think about is very much how we engage with and represent communities across the place, and the connection between their local representatives, the powers and responsibilities they hold, and their ability to represent places. For all of those reasons, the 3 unitary option, we believe, needs to be one of those considered, and we are developing the proposals for the 3 unitary option, including the expanded boundaries of the city. I think it's important for you to know that, or hold in mind, that this is not a decision point. It is an update on and an indication of what we want to look at. We are expecting some feedback following the submission to government, but there is a lot of work to do between now and the end of November, which is the date when final proposals are due to be submitted. I think just to say that there are therefore different views on the different options, and actually as we go forward, I think further conversations needed with our neighbouring authorities and with the County Council, not least because these issues around how we get the right configuration right are very relevant to all of us. But I also think the feedback that we're expecting from government will help us think about how we really do make sure that these the 3 unitary option that we're proposing can be configured to meet government's requirements and criteria. I probably won't say anything more at this stage, so I'm very conscious that, you know, others may have views, but I'm very happy to talk more about the work that we're doing to support the case. The final thing I would say is I'm very grateful to officers across the council who have inputted into what's been really quite a short timeline to come up with a set of proposals. We have got a lot more work to do, as you've referenced. That includes you know, a programme of engagement as we develop the proposals further.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And I would like to thank you personally for the huge amount of work that you've done on this. This has been a huge amount of additional work on top of the day job. And from the very beginning, we've been very clear that although we want to make sure that we get this absolutely right, because it's absolutely fundamental to the future of our city and for local residents and businesses, it's also really, really important that we carry on getting the council right as well. And so I think that we have been doing absolutely everything we can to make sure that both of those things are happening in tandem. And I just wanted to reassure Cabinet on that front. I'm aware that we've had plenty of discussion on this topic over the kind of last weeks and months, and we'll probably have plenty more in future. Are there any questions or comments that Cabinet want to make at this particular point? Bearing in mind, as has been said, this is a kind of step in the process, a submission to government about the process that we're going to go through to finalise our proposals, and that is alongside all the other councils, and there's obviously the joint letter present in the papers. Lubna.
I just want to thank members and council officers and staff for their preparedness and readiness to support our council and our city. And I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work so far, what's gone into it. And I'm sure that going forward that you will be ready for anything that will come our way to support the people of Oxford.
Thank you, Lubna. Alex.
Yeah, I very much want to echo that and just express some support for the option that our officers are working on, which is the 3 unitary approach and what the implication of that. I think it's important to make clear this isn't just a sort of like, you know, how to tinker with lines on a map or something like that. That's something rather more fundamental that sits behind it. So, I mean, we talked about the history of the city. Couple of things I would point, or maybe 3 things I would point to. If you go back and look at what Oxford was in the 20s and 30s, it was, if not the, certainly one of the fastest growing cities in terms of economic growth in the entirety of the UK, percentage terms. That very much fits into what it is that the government is looking for nationally. And in fact, obviously, the Chancellor has come and spoken in Oxfordshire, not quite in Oxford, but in Oxfordshire on exactly that. And I think that's a really important message to pick up and be part of the communication. It's also true that if you go back and look to the proposals for the expansion of Oxford's back in the late 20s, bits of the areas around Oxford now were supposed to have joined Oxford then, back in the late 1920s, and they were ruled out. So it's almost like going back and rethinking that. There was sensible, concrete proposals from the Working Party who put that together, and the then government disregarded them because of slight obsession over where county boundaries used to sit, which seems odd now when county boundaries aren't anywhere near. But that's an important issue. And of course, you've made reference to this, the 1974 changes, which created the two-tier system and things. And this is an opportunity. I think rightly, it is a positive opportunity to go back and correct that error in legislation. But in terms of looking forward, I think I would highlight the opportunities here for growth, as we provided in the 20s and 30s, but also the equality and fairness which needs to go with that, and I think is an absolutely fundamental point. But the two things which I think I would finish on, first of all, the difference between the three unitary option and the other options is that they are about clear connections with communities and with people. And I think that's a really fundamental point to get over. And this is why I think this particular approach is the best one. It's not just a money saving exercise. This shouldn't be a purpose of how to save money most efficiently. It is how to make sure that there is a local governance that properly reflects and is close to it, as close as it possibly can be to the things that matter for local people and local communities. And I think that is what this option has and other options do not have in the same extent. And that's why I think I'm very pleased that we are pursuing this option, and we should be proud to say so, not just, inadvertently disappear into numbers. This is about something much more important.
Thank you, Alex. Nigel.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think Alex has very eloquently put the case for the GOUA, as I put it in shorthand these days. One of the most compelling parts of the narrative for me was the reality that we have communities on the edge of Oxford who look to Oxford in every meaningful sense. So they look to Oxford for jobs and economy. They look to Oxford in some ways for housing. They look to Oxford for leisure provision, very significantly. And they look for cultural activities. And that part of the document I thought was really well crafted, actually, and makes a very persuasive case. The other thing I'd say, all my gut instinct says that bigger is not better. Particularly in Oxford, I think maybe there are other parts of the country where the electorate is not so, how can I put it, forensic in its desire for accountability. But in this city, it's very strong. And you have to justify what you're doing and why, and you are held to account. And they say there's always some expert somewhere in Oxford who knows more about it than anybody else. So having a large authority, which will necessarily be detached and coping with everything in a single entity, runs the risk that level of accountability is eroded, and the citizen in the end feels neglected and ignored as and when decisions of import are being made. So small is actually better in this respect, and bigger is not. The third area, I think, where we need, and the document makes it clear, we will need to do some more work, is on efficiency. Because depending through which prism you see this story, if efficiency is your prism, the county quotes in its letter a very large number per year, 27 million over 5 years, over 100 million pounds of efficiency that would come from having a single unitary authority in the county. I think we're going to have to, look at our own ways of working and the way we work in the new unitary system to give some comfort that we are going to be both a well-led authority but also an efficient authority. Because I think that is a risk if we don't do that, that others might make mayhem, trouble, whatever you want to use around that particular issue, which would not be helpful for our case. So that's my third observation about the next stage of the work, really. But it is a powerful, well constructed and well written story, and I think anybody coming to it with an impartial mind would think it had a lot of things that were very convincing about it.
Thank you, Nigel. Anybody else for anything further? I'm not seeing any. Caroline, you wanted to come back in?
Just wanted to thank members for their thanks and support for the work that we're doing. Just to pick up on that last point, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. The work we have done to date, which necessarily has been quick, but it does suggest that there are efficiencies to be made in all of the options. I think we do need to be, we will be doing some more work on that, but I also think it's important to bear in mind we should look at this not just in terms of efficiency that you may be able to write on paper will be delivered from simplifying structures, and the experience from areas that have gone through this elsewhere is very varied on how on whether they actually are delivered in fact. But there is an important question about efficiency to the public purse overall and in the long run, which comes back to the importance of thinking about reforming services that drive better outcomes through our health services, through the justice system, through all sorts of other elements of the public sector. So I think we need to make and really have a kind of convincing argument around that. And then I think the other link is actually to think about what would be generated, what benefit would be generated for the local area through getting it right on growth. So, Councillor Hollingsworth already talked about the connection to the government's ambitions and agenda on growth. We know that we have got a job to do to serve the potential of our economy well, to the benefit of people in our area, but also nationally. We need to I think, connect that to an argument about actually the financial benefits to place, which drive better outcomes, which again, in the long run, save money to the public purse. So I think that's we need to make our case on efficiencies. Yes, we'll probably never win the argument against a fewer number overall in terms of just pure efficiencies, but the experience of other councils elsewhere is that is very variable anyway, and I think there is a much stronger argument to be thinking about how we drive efficiencies more generally.
Absolutely, and I think that case has also been made quite successfully by a number of smaller unitaries as well. Okay, conscious of time and the fact that we have another meeting as well to follow on from this, or at least some of us do. Unless anyone has any final remarks that they wish to make, I was just going to conclude by saying that this is far from the end, but more of a start of the process, really, unfortunately. But I think that we have made a good start on that process, and I think there's a lot of good partnership working, I will say, across the county, and I'm really being very pleased that so far, and I hope it will continue, we've been able to work very collegiately with neighbouring authorities, and long may that last, because that partnership working is really crucial to everything that we do, not just this, and will continue to be so in the future. So the report in front of you has got a number of recommendations. It's to note the invitation that we received, to which we are responding collectively, to agree the submission of the interim plan, which is set out in the reports, to agree that our preferred local government reorganisation proposal is the creation of 3 unitary councils, and finally to agree that should Oxfordshire County Council's Cabinet not agree that that should be part of their proposals, that we would submit it separately. But I'm not anticipating that that's going to be the case, but that's there just in case. Is everyone happy to support those proposals? Thank you very much. I think that concludes our business. Just going back to my agenda. So I think it's probably, yeah. So sorry, we do have some minutes. So we should be also resolving to note the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of March. So can we do that?
Aye.
Lovely. Thank you very much. The date of the next proper meeting or next full meeting of the Cabinet is the 9th of April. So thank you all very much. I declare the meeting closed.